And as I think you may be calling this video, COVID saved my life, which it did.
Yeah. Welcome to Carnivore Nation. I've got a fantastic interview today. I did a couple of posts recently and got quite a lot of comments, and this guy made a few comments on one of my posts, and in discussions with him I found him a really interesting guy, so I want to share his story with yourselves. So I'd like to welcome Ben. Welcome, Ben.
Thanks for having me on.
So Ben, I'll start off with a very simple question, and I'll let you have the floor from there. So what was your journey to become carnivore? What is your story? What made, what's your background and where it got you? So the floor is yours, young man.
Thank you, sir. Well, the obvious one was I'm fat, or was extremely fat.
I've just put up a couple of visuals of yourself as you were.
There you go. Oh, Father Christmas.
Yeah. So clearly you're obese, if not morbidly obese.
Obese type 2. I was. That was probably the heaviest I ever found myself, at about 102 kilos. Yeah, 102 kilos was the heaviest.
224 pounds.
There you go, 16 stone.
Yeah.
I was living the high life in Makati, Philippines, which is pretty close to where I am now. I'm a couple of hours outside. We'll get to that later on. But I was working in the business district of Manila, Philippines, living the high life, and just enjoying life. I was eating too much crap. I was drinking too much. I enjoyed it at the time, but back then, silly things like 1.5 litres of Coca-Cola every day, a large, the big packs of Lay's, crisps or Walkers back home. I was eating close to one a day, just snacking.
Wow.
And I got into the shape that you saw me there. Then came COVID, a few months after those pictures that you've got there.
Yeah.
And unlike the UK, we went into even more extreme lockdown. It got to the point where only one person was allowed out of the house at a time. I couldn't even go outside to walk the dogs. I could not leave the perimeter of my house. Same for the kids, obviously. But one person was given a pass in each household to be allowed to go outside and do shopping and any necessary things outside. That was my wife. She's or was back then, she was working on the ambulances. She's a first responder. She teaches what would you call it, mountaineering, rescue and all that sort of stuff. So she was required to be in the field as well, part of her job. So we were locked down for much longer than the UK. And as I think you may be calling this video, COVID saved my life, which it did.
Yeah.
Because that picture that you saw of me sitting in the armchair, slumped in the armchair, I got into, that one. That's horrible for me to look at, to be fair. I only found it yesterday to pass on to you, but it takes me back to a very horrible place in my life.
Because this one also is quite, you said to me that was one that kind of
that was the catalyst. That was the inspiration. Yeah, but the other one, I was in a horrible state of depression. I didn't realize it. The family did. I was locking myself away in my den, and I was just in a mess. I was in a real mess. If I look back, 2020 hindsight's an easy thing, but to be very frank, I did consider suicide.
Right.
I don't want to go too. We can go deeper into that later, but I don't want to do it now.
Fully understand.
It was way in the back of my mind. I've only confessed.
So as well as obesity, you're obviously having clearly mental and depression issues.
Terrible.
What about other health? Because you mentioned was diabetes on the horizon, or was there other?
Let's move on to Christmas.
Okay, shall I show that picture that we shared?
Oh, yes, you can show that. The one on the right, yes.
Yeah.
Philippines is very, very American-centric. So as you can see there, we're all wearing red and white, or all wearing just white. It's a tradition here, like in America, that you dress up and you take a family photo on Christmas Day. So there you have it. So that photograph and the other one you showed me with the Christmas hat on, I didn't think I looked like that in the bathroom mirror.
Mm.
I saw those photographs the following day, I think. I can't remember. But yeah, maybe the following day after Christmas. And I said, expletive, expletive, expletive. Is that what I really look like? And the family sort of turned around to me in almost relief and said, yes, Dad, that's what you do look like. Mm. And so at that point, I've got to do something about this. My wife, being a first responder, knew my blood pressure was sky high. It was in a bad state. My resting heart, I wear an Apple Watch. My resting heart rate at that time was in the mid-high 90s, even when sleeping. My A1C I'd done a blood test a few months beforehand. At that time, it was 6.2. Hold on a second, because I've been outside of the UK. We can talk about this later. I've been outside the UK for so long, I don't talk English anymore in that respect. 6.2 in millimoles for the UK was 44. So I was pre-diabetic. Right. I'd had let me check what you call it over there again. I've got it all here. I've written it all down. I had as part of the blood test, I had a GGT test. Right. Are you familiar? You're familiar with GGT? Yeah. My understanding, my memory, because I haven't checked it since back 3 years ago. We're talking Christmas. So to be clear, we're talking about Christmas 2021 here. Sorry, Christmas 2020 going into 2021. So it was at the height of the original lockdown. So I had a fatty liver taken from that. I don't think you can, from my understanding, you can't actually determine it was fatty liver, but the GGT test should be around, the normal range is about 50, I think, and mine was over 150. So the doctor at that time deduced, or the clinic that I went to, I'll talk about doctors later, the clinic deduced that the size of me, the amount that I drank, etc., etc. I probably had a fatty liver. And at that point, it was, I need to do something about this. I really do. I was in a bad mental place. Everything was just not good. I was stuck in the house. Went online. Let's take one step back a few months earlier. I was doing some work for a good old mate of mine in Manila, doing some tech work. I used to do some IT stuff in a previous life. And I'd not seen him for a few months, and he just called me in and said, he's self-employed, he's a wealth manager. And he said, can you come into the office, mate? And we need some help with a network in the office, blah, blah, blah. Can you help us out with this? So I said, yeah, I'll pop in. I walked into the office, and this guy looks like me now. I can send a photo if you want to add it in later, but he looks like me now, or looked like me now. And he was bigger than my original photographs. He's about 2 inches taller, and he was a few kilos heavier. He's bigger than and what the hell have you done? You look great. What's going on? And he explained keto to me. And explained what he was doing, and he was sat there at lunchtime while I was under his desk with cables and wires. And he was sat there with a bowl of salad with some salmon on top, and I thought, that looks pretty good. I worked with him for, I don't know, less than a week, I think it was. And after that, thought nothing about it. But back to, after Christmas, coming into January 2020, that memory came back to me. So I went online and just put in keto. And back then I found the likes of, obviously everybody knows Ken Berry. I found Dr. Dan Maggs, who was heavily is an English doctor. You may have come across him. He doesn't do so much now, but he did a lot in the past. Found him. Who else? Eric Berg. He was another guy.
Yeah.
Eric Berg, I think he's a Scanda hooligan that lives in America. That was an athlete or something like that. And a couple of others. And I sat there and I watched and watched. Must have been 100 hours more of these videos over the course of the next couple of weeks. I could be considered a contrarian. I go against most things. And one of those being I absolutely point blank refused to have poison put into my veins at the time. And knowing that I was obese, type 2 obese they call it here, I was type 2 obese, I had a fatty liver, I had pre-diabetes, I had high blood pressure. I mean, that's the perfect malady. That's the perfect way that if you're going to contract the Rona, you're going to be affected badly by it. And that was part of the catalyst. I've got to do something about this. So found Dr. Berg, found Ken Berry. And at the time, 3 years ago, Ken Berry, I think he might have just started Carnivore. He might have been a few weeks or a couple of months into it. But all of these guys were promoting keto. And the one good thing that Ken Berry does, and a couple of the others do, is they link papers to their videos.
Yeah.
So I spent time reading those papers. I've got a huge interest in human biology and all the rest of it. I studied it at college. Never used it, but studied it, and tried to make sense of these papers. Bottom line is, it just made sense. It was just so obvious to me, especially I've been at the University of YouTube for the last 3 years.
Great university.
A great university. And besides being a bit of a contrarian, I'm still am today to a greater extent, a terrible procrastinator. And it wasn't until the 23rd of January of 2021 that I was watching the light bulb is like it was yesterday, 3 years ago. Ken Berry said, just do it. So I did. Simple as that. In one of his videos, just do it. So I went to my fridge and I found half a aged cabbage, let's call it that. Half an aged cabbage. It was a
chemistry experiment.
Yeah, well, not quite that bad. And a kilo of ground pork.
Right.
I cooked that up. It was swimming in grease. And I ate it. I didn't feel great because of the amount of grease that was in there. Going from a relatively standard diet, a sad diet, whatever you want to call it, to that bolus of food was quite a, what was the word? What would you call it? My system didn't like it. My system just didn't like it. And I felt rotten afterwards with all that grease. The following day, I woke up. Well, that wasn't so bad. Got hold of the wife and said, look, I forget whose video it was. It might have, I think it was Eric Berg. He did a video with a whiteboard and wrote down everything that you can eat on a keto diet and everything that you can't eat on a keto diet. And I said, right, this is what we're going to do. And she sort of looked at me a little bit weird. And I said, look, just trust me. Let me do this. So she went shopping and got me a whole load of groceries. I've always ate Whole Foods. I've never, since I was a teenager, eaten breakfast.
Right.
So I had a foot up in that respect. Whole Foods, we'll talk about it later. whole foods for me comes from my family. I'm an Essex boy. Mum and dad were blue collar workers. They weren't particularly wealthy. Anything that came in a packet into Finders or whatever like that, we're not having that. That's not food. So I was lucky in that respect. But everything that my mum cooked, we'd have a roast 2 or 3 times a week, but it would have the mashed potatoes, it would have the boiled potatoes, it would have the soggy vegetables and all the rest of it. So as a kid, until I sort of left home, I was very much a meat and potatoes man, but it always had bread on the table, butter on the table, gravy, blah, 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 blah. But it was relatively whole food. So coming back to today, getting those fruit, those vegetables and meat was fairly straightforward for me. And I've never really been a big fan of vegetables. I'll have a little bit of cauliflower, a little bit of broccoli, carrots, cabbage. I'm not a fan. So again, that was relatively easy. And I found myself within the first couple of weeks very meat heavy keto. Without knowing anything at the time, I was probably closer to ketovore. It would be, just a couple of florets of broccoli or a couple of florets of cauliflower, and that was it. The rest of it was meat and grease, and lots and lots and lots of bacon. So I was probably closer to ketovore without trying. Although my friend Paul showed me how to do, I'd have a salad once in a while and that sort of thing. But that's what got me into it. And my starting weight back then, I was down from my super maximum of about 102 kilos. I was down to 94 kilos at that time. 94 kilos. I've written it all down. So
207 pounds. Yeah.
Yeah, 14 stone 8, as you've seen in the pictures.
Yeah.
What was strange for me as well at that time, and again, we'll talk about this in more depth if you want to a bit later, I fell into fasting very quickly.
Right.
Very, very, very quickly, within the first week.
So is that like a natural fast, as in you're not hungry, or you
just
consciously, or you so it was a hunger driven, wasn't a conscious, I'm not going to eat, it's I
not at all.
Eat.
Not at all.
Exactly how I find it.
And I go back to the first day of that grease that my body really didn't want. The effects of it from a nauseating point of view or anything like that disappeared very, very quickly. But it was enough energy to sustain me. And it was, as you correctly put it, it was hunger driven. I was going to say something else about that. Yeah, so I think my first fast was 48 hours.
Wow.
It was like within the first week. And I think, for me anyway, the way I understand it, it got me into ketosis a lot quicker than many might over a period of, 2 to 3, 4 weeks, whatever. And I just went from there. Take it back to the beginning when I decided I was going to do this. January the 23rd, I set a goal. Because I was concerned about the Rona, because I was not going to have the jab and all the rest of it, I knew I had to get myself down to a sensible, healthy position as far as weight, blood pressure, etc., went very quickly, because we were all in a place of fear at that time. So I set the goal. I wanted to reach my ideal weight, and I'll explain that a little in a second, by my birthday, which was the middle of August. Okay. So I'd given myself 7.5, 8 months.
So I'd seen on period of time to achieve a key goal. I think, if you're setting it like next month, then it's impossible. 7 or 8. Well, I can only go, but within 3 months, I shifted 4.5 stone, and didn't anticipate that. I lost 53 pounds in 3 months. So you know.
I obviously haven't watched all your videos.
No, yeah. So you look at some of my pictures. I was like yourself. I was like a balloon.
Yeah, I've seen the pictures. Yeah, sure.
And I was ashamed to be in front of a camera, you know, and that's where my confidence wasn't great. And I'm a confident guy. I do stand-up comedy and things like that. So
yeah.
but obviously, so yeah. So
Mankini
I've,
there.
you know, sorry, I didn't mean to distract from what you were
No,
saying. But
no.
yeah, to me, that's a sensible
Wow.
goal because it's
Okay.
achievable correctly, you know.
Yeah, if we've got time, I might come back to that a little bit later because
Sure.
I think
Okay.
I might have done things wrong at the time. But the point was, I'd seen videos from Ken Berry and a few of the others where people had lost this stupid amount of weight quickly. So I said, "Okay, I'm going to do that." Now, the first mistake I made was going on to the first thing I could Google about what my weight should be and where I should be.
Yeah.
And you put your height, your age, your lifestyle as far as exercise etc. is concerned into the first BMI calculator that I found. I now know that they're not particularly accurate, blah blah blah, and it said I should be 60 kilos, dead on.
Wow. Right.
I'm not particularly big framed, but I've got a pair of shoulders and stuff, and I'm only 5'6". So it said I should have been 60 kilos.
So it's 132 pounds. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was my initial goal. Now, within about 7 months of hardcore, strict, meat-heavy keto, I think it was closer to carnivore. To ketovore. I was down to 63 kilos.
Wow.
Within 7 months. That was the lowest I've ever been.
Well done.
The wife, well, yes and no. The wife sort of interceded and said, "You're pushing this too hard. You look very gaunt. You look older than you are. You don't look well." At the time, I was, 57, turning 58. Right. You don't look well. This is too much for you. I had very loose skin on my stomach, like an elephant's trunk or whatever. It was horrible. So I had a lot of loose skin under the arms, as we all get. The wattle was a lot. We'll come to that towards the end. The wattle was a lot bigger than it is now. It was hanging like an 80-year-old, where I'd lost so much fat from the system, and I started thinking about it. Yeah, my goal is this. However, am I feeling right? And all this time, I was housebound. No distractions or anything like that because we were under lockdown.
Yeah.
And at about this time, maybe a month or so later, we started to get let out in Manila. But the kids weren't in school; they were doing online schooling, and all the stuff that you had back in the UK. And my wife knew that I was always going to retire or move to where I live now. I live in Subic Bay. There we go. I wore the shirt that I showed you the other day.
Yeah.
Subic Bay, Philippines. It's the old US Navy base, about 2.5, 3 hours north of Manila. Right. You can't really see out the back there. I'm in my son's bedroom using his Superwash computer for this interview. And out the back there is jungle.
Wow.
There's monkeys in the trees. There's bananas. There's pineapples. There's guava. There's a whole host of stuff right out there beyond that balcony. I'm 150 meters above sea level. It's 300 feet above sea level. It's beautiful here. And my missus knew that I wanted to, the old Duchess, as I call her, she knew I wanted to be here. This is where I want to be in my older age. So she said, well, bugger it. We're under lockdown here. They've raised the lockdown where I didn't need the jab to travel because we were only allowed in the local area to travel. She said, well, the kids aren't in school. They're online. They can do their online schooling everywhere. Why don't we move? And of course, she got a big thumbs up from me. And it took us a month or two, but we moved up to Subic. My motorbike, I've got a Triumph Bonneville downstairs. My motorbike was on auto. Oh, I was with a motorcycle club that only rode Harley Davidsons, and I was not going to ride a Harley Davidson. So I bought a Bonneville, and that bike was on autopilot to where I am now. I would get up here as often as I could, so I probably had more friends and acquaintances here than I did back in Manila. So anyway, we've moved. It's taken a month or two to arrange it all, find a property, blah 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 blah. So we've moved here, and don't forget, we're still pretty much under lockdown. Most of the bars and pubs and restaurants and all the rest of it really don't have much custom, or allowed that much custom. Nobody wants to go and sit in a restaurant where you've got plastic dividers between two seats in the coffee shop or the restaurant. So nobody that I knew bothered. So I think I mentioned it to you last night. We've settled in the house. I've gone out. We've gone down to my favourite bar in Beloy Beach, overlooking the sand and the sea. And this is probably July, August time, around my birthday. And the first two people that I recognised came up to me and said, "Ben, are you sick? Are you okay, mate?" Because I was down at 63 kilos. I said, no, it's intentional. I needed to do this. You're going to kill yourself. You're going to kill yourself.
They all become doctors, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. Sitting in the pub there drinking as I typically would have done, 15, 20 bottles of beer and, pizza and all the rest of it. They all of a sudden, they became doctors. I didn't actually explain to them immediately my way of eating. And again, interesting, we'll come to this later. So I've sort of taken both sides of the equation, and what my wife had said. I said, maybe I am pushing too hard. So I'm comfortable now in myself, in the way I feel, the energy that I've got and all the rest of it. I'm comfortable now at about 66 kilos. That's where I like to be. I'm more than that at the moment, and we'll come to that in a second. It was part of your earlier. So
based on this image, would that be about how you are now? Obviously, with your lunch.
Yes, that's a good story. That's actually was taken about 6 weeks ago, I think, and right there, I'm 70 kilos.
Okay, and then I've got this one that you sent me also, which is your more current one, I believe.
It's the other way round. That one was taken. That was taken just before Christmas.
Right.
And I was there. Let's proceed. I like to be 66 kilos.
Yeah.
But something I learned along the journey is that our body doesn't like losing fat.
Mm.
If you lose too much fat too quickly, your body's going, "What the hell's going on here? Are you sick? Are you starving?" And it tries to hold on to that fat. And from my understanding, then you hit what they like to call a set point. And my set point, as far as my body's concerned right now, is between sort of 67, 68, 69 kilos. So to keep down to that 66, I have to work quite hard.
So can I ask how old you are so people can put that into context?
I turned 60 in August.
Okay. Right.
I get my bus pass. Do you get your bus pass in England?
I left the UK. It's like 66 now, I think.
Is it? I left the UK in 1989, and I've not. Right. I've only been back once in that time when my dear old mum died in 2003. Right. But I can actually get old age discount in the Philippines as a resident of the Philippines when I hit 60. So it's a landmark birthday for me. Where were we?
So you were saying you're
comfortable weight. Yeah. So I work hard to stay at 66. The difficulty for me now is that I did that hard work in the first 7 or 8 months. Mm-hmm. There was no distractions, no hurdles, nothing. I now live, as I sort of mentioned to you yesterday, I live not a lonely life, but I live a fairly reclusive life. I'm semi-retired. All my work is online. I've obviously got the kids and stuff here. So it's very easy for me, whilst at home, to cook the way I want and all the rest of it. I am the cook in the family.
Yeah.
I do. There's another conversation there about how the family view it and what they're doing these days. So at home, I'm fine, but I'm bored as hell. I've tried to find myself, additional work and all the rest of it. But my age over here, it's very, very difficult to find anything to do. Certainly with a salary to get out of bed for. Filipino average salary is, I think, about 18 to 20,000 pesos a month, which equates to about $400. So I'm not going to go to the local Lidl and stack shelves for them or anything like that. It's pointless. So anyway, nowadays I allow myself 2 days every month to go down to the beach, to the bars with my friends, meet up so they don't think I'm a boring old fart, and I'll have a drink and maybe a bite to eat that's off plan. But I try to keep it as close as possible. We were talking about it before. I used to drink a lot of heavy beer when I was in Makati in Manila, out with the boys at the pub 5, 6, 7 nights a week. I'd be drinking pints of Guinness, pints of cider, anything that wasn't local beer, because it's not the greatest beer. But now, I'll have a couple of beers with the boys, which will typically be either a light beer. I forget, it's well under 100 calories. There's another argument. There's another conversation. A bottle, and very, very, very low carbs. It's like cat's piss. It's all. Can I say that on here?
Yeah, of course you can. Don't worry. It's not for children.
Yeah, it's horrible beer, but just to be social, I'll have a couple of those, and then typically I'll tell my mates I'm not in the rounds because they're necking it down like we used to in the old days. They're necking it down, and I'll say I'll run my own race, and then I'll have a whiskey soda or something like that. So I'm having the nights out, and I am off plan to a certain extent, and I will then feel that over the next couple of days. I'll be out of ketosis. I might put on a little bit of inflammatory weight or whatever, so then I have to work back to get that back down again. And I do that a couple of times a month. That's how I choose to have a life, for want of a better term. So that pretty much, on a very flat, narrow band, brings you from how I started, why I started, to where I am now. Latest lab results, I've got a A1C of 4.9, which right. is, I've got it written down here again because I know I'm speaking to England. Where are we? Well, it's all American here, but I'm below 30. I'm about 30, 31, which I think, which is good. The latest time the missus took my blood pressure, I was 140/70, which is just about right for a man of my age.
Yeah.
It's not perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better than it was. And right now, my resting heart rate, where is it? I made a note of it earlier, is in the low 70s. Again, not perfect, but a hell of a lot better than the mid-high 90s. Obviously got rid of my fatty liver. I've got a flat, relatively. You showed the picture. I've got a relatively flat stomach now, with a little bit of loose skin and fat around the hips. But I'm in a much, much better place than I was at the end of my initial 7 or 8 month period. There were no clinics open because they were still sort of out of business and stuff. And so I only found out more recently where I am now. I don't know what the how my improvements went down or up, whatever way you want to call it, over that period. So, but as far as weight, blood pressure is concerned, and fat, I'd hit my goals very, very quickly. So that's it in a nutshell. There's obviously a lot that goes off and around it beyond that.
So that leads me into my next question. Obviously, you've got to where you are, but how challenging now do you find things like Christmas, like the Christmas we've just gone? Do you find that's a real test for you now?
Well, I choose to live. I choose to go off plan. I have done for the last 3 Christmases. I choose to have a few days off, Christmas to New Year, and I pay the consequences. I'm happy with that. However, the first year I did it, I think I started being a naughty boy on maybe Christmas Eve or the day before. It's an annual thing for my son to do. He's just turned 17. He's done it for the last 10 years. He goes in the kitchen, he gets the jars of Robertsons and makes mince pies. So we all have the mince pies as soon as they come out of the oven. I'm not going to miss those. Number one, I love them, and number two, my boy made them. So I've always started the day or so beforehand. I'll have a full Christmas dinner. Normally, I used to cook Christmas dinner every year when there was a little bit more to my wife's family and a couple of friends and stuff. And I'd do Christmas dinner for, I don't know, 8 people, 10 people. But the last couple of years, because we're freshly moved up here, the table has been a lot smaller. So instead of, and the kids are getting older, they don't care about presents under the tree any in the morning. They just give me the money. They want an envelope with some cash. Yeah. So they can, oh, Dad, I don't like that. That's not the right style. Can you send it back? Or Mum, I didn't really want that. So
that's kids for you.
The Christmas thing's gone now. It's not there. They want to go and see their boyfriend or their girlfriend or their mates and that sort of thing. So 3 years ago, we've moved up, we're process of moving and stuff up here. So we now go to one of our favourite bar, restaurant, hotel places on the beach, and we meet up with all our mates and we have a full Christmas dinner and then we drink into the evening. I don't drive here. I want to get out of the car and shoot people. I ride my motorbike because I can escape either side. I can do what I like on a big bike. But I refuse to drive a car here. So the wife drives. We've got a nice big safe pickup truck. But drinking and driving, although I think there's like 3 breathalyzers in the whole of the region, there's no way they can do anything about it. But obviously with kids and all the rest of it, we don't want the accident. Yeah. So we stay at the hotel. And then the next day at the hotel, Boxing Day, as we call it, is an English guy owns the hotel and his family. They have a Boxing Day, and it's also their anniversary. So there's another big party with all the leftovers from the previous day, turned into a buffet. And it's tradition for us to, we'll sit out there with a couple of big la-di-das and a full Stilton with a bottle of port stuck in it, and it's just a nice day. I'm not going to give that up. So we did that the first year. I probably put on a couple of kilos over those few days, and being a boring old grumpy fart, I didn't do New Year's Eve. So it was only like a 3 or 4 day period. Done it, no problem. Last year, 2022-23, exactly the same. This year, I made a mistake. I've got a mate that works offshore, a Scottish guy, works offshore in the Middle East. So he's a month on, month off.
Right.
So he was leaving the Philippines to go back to Qatar on, I think it was the 18th of December. Ben, you've got to come and have a wee dram with us before I go back. I'm not home for Christmas, so we're going to have a drink. So I've gone up there. We've polished off a very expensive, decent malt whiskey. That was on the 17th or 18th, I think. Then it was my girl's birthday the following day. So it was birthday cake. It was pizza. And it was her 18th birthday, so we opened a bottle of champagne for her. And it just went from that date all the way through until about 10 days ago.
Right.
That's why I'm now at 70 kilos. It's the heaviest I've been in 18 months.
Well, the first thing I'll say there is there's no carnivore police. So if you do switch out, you switch out as long as you eventually get back on it. So but interesting enough, if you've had that period of time of back on the sad type of diet, how did your body react to that? Because I found when I had a couple of days where I probably bent the rules, to say the least, on Boxing Day, my team Ipswich were playing Leicester. It was the top of the league of the championship.
I was going to say, which league is that?
Yeah.
I don't know that league.
Yeah. You've been there. Sorry, just so anyone watching, Ben is a West Ham fan, and I'm an Ipswich
2012 was the last time
quite a
we
bit
were
of
there.
banter. But I had a couple of Guinnesses before the game, and I hadn't drunk Guinness for 6-7 months. And the following morning, about 3 a.m, my guts were rank. So I'd be interested in you having a longer period of time of off the carnivore, how it impacted on you.
I need to go back a bit. I did the carnivore, ketovore, if you will. I'm carnivore now, pretty predominantly carnivore now. We'll come to that later if necessary. But I chose the diet or the way of eating, the lifestyle, whatever you want to call it. I chose it specifically because I was under lockdown. I wasn't going to have the jab. I looked terrible. And if I caught the Rona, I was going to be in a mess.
Yeah.
So that was the reason that I started. About 6 weeks after I started, my IBS, which ruled my life for over 40 years, disappeared.
Wow.
Like that. I'd lost jobs. I couldn't get onto trains from Essex out near Wickford. I couldn't get on a train to go to Liverpool Street because I can go into more detail, but leave it at that for the time being. My guts were in an absolute mess. I tried doctors, long story. So 6 weeks into keto, it's disappeared. Well, keto carnivore, whatever you want to call it, it's disappeared. Every time I go off plan, I get a little dig in the ribs. You know why you're doing this. You know what's going to happen if you do it. You know what's going to happen. And within less than a week, all those horrible symptoms come back. Where if I want to travel anywhere, I have to get up maybe 2-3 hours before I want to go to make sure my system's cleaned out.
Yeah.
And I'm confident enough to travel. Right now, I've been back for the last week or more eating properly, and I'm back to not my normal again. But I do get a reminder every single time. A lot of inflation as well.
Yeah.
Now, if I have a couple of beers and a pizza, I know about it the following day. And over this Christmas period, my wife, one of the other things that happened to me along that sort of early journey, the first 7 or 8 months, besides being depressed, I had ridiculous brain fog. Let me just remember what it was. What's it called? I've forgotten what they called it. I've got it here.
Keto flu.
No. This is.
You mean the actual foggy feeling prior to? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No, the keto. I didn't have keto flu, funny enough. What did we call it back then? I spoke about it with a doctor friend of mine. I never had it diagnosed, but what did they call it? What did he call it? I've got it here. MCI.
Right.
It's I haven't got the description of what it is, but at the time, I would forget halfway through a sentence what I was saying. I would go off at an angle and not. No, I wasn't a Billy Connolly where I could go off for 20 minutes and come back to what I was talking about. I would forget words. I mean, not having a stutter, thinking about what I'm going to say, like I am doing at the moment.
Yeah.
My vocabulary just disappeared.
Yeah.
What's the word I'm looking? I was in a mess, and again, within the first few weeks, completely reversed.
Wow.
Back to my old self, able to have a bit of banter, all the rest of it. And if I go off plan now, that sort of creeps back a little bit. It creeps back into me a little bit where, I'll go a bit foggy and, a bit forgetful and all the rest of it. So going off plan is, for me, certainly 3 years eating properly on the 23rd of this month. So 3 years in. Thank you. 3 years in, you're not out of the woods. For me, anyway.
Right.
I'm not out of the woods. It's still there. So I haven't cured things. It's all in remission. And that is, the people talk about it recently. That's my why I stick to what I'm doing for what I could go back to.
So take me through what your a regular diet now that you're on now in terms of the food, because you were telling me some of the foods that you eat, and I was mouth-watering and quite jealous when you were talking about the giant prawns and etc. So, and we touched upon the other thing Carnivore misses out on is iodine, and you mentioned about how you deal with that. So, do you want to share a little bit of that with us?
Yeah. Okay. Right now, I'm back to being relatively strict until I go out with the boys again in a couple of weeks' time. But right now, my typical diet is ground beef and eggs. That's my typical diet. Now, as I mentioned, I'll probably have ground beef and eggs with lots of butter and maybe a rasher or two of bacon here and there. I'll probably have that 5 times a week. Probably 5 times a week. In fact, the family, I'm still fasting. I'm about 85 hours into a fast as we speak.
Wow.
The family, I've just cooked them before I came upstairs. I cooked them a whole tenderloin.
Oh, wow.
And they're sitting down there with garlic tenderloin cooked in ghee. Whether I hold out and break my fast later or whether I wait till tomorrow is a different matter. But
80 odd hours is an impressive fast. So
yeah, I think I mentioned the longest. We'll come back to fasting later because I actually want to talk about that.
Okay.
But so they've got a tenderloin today. I mentioned yesterday the wife jumps in the car because there's a 2-tier. It's not me being lazy. There's a 2-tier pricing system here. Locals and foreigners, and just over the hill in that direction there's a what they call a palenque, which is a wet market where all the local producers from the region up to I suppose about 2-3 hours away, they can come and sell their goods. So the wife gets down there and she buys our meat. She'll get on FaceTime or WhatsApp, whatever, and she'll call me. What about that lump of meat? What about that? Do you fancy this? Do you fancy that? She knows our staple for me is ground beef, and they're not the kids and the wife aren't going to eat ground beef every day. So we'll get some extra joints of meat, like the tenderloin, maybe a standing roast, or she buys some really gnarly, horrible, really cheap old meat, which I'll shove in the slow cooker and I'll make them a sauce up, like more of a casserole type sauce, onion, tomato base and all the rest of it. And they can have that with their beef. And I'll just have the beef that's been salted, maybe a bit of pepper, maybe a bit of garlic, whatever, for the 7 or 8 hours. So a lot of beef. We'll have, as I mentioned, the pork here in this country is cheap. It's about 300 pesos, which is, what's 300 pesos in real money? Where are we? I've made the notes on it so we could come back to this. Where are we? Yeah, 300 pesos is £4.20 a kilo.
Wow, fantastic price. Yeah.
I don't know how that compares, but it's freshly slaughtered. There is no better what they call lechon anywhere else in this world. I know a few people from Hawaii and a couple of other places say, yeah, you haven't tried ours. But in comparison with the last time I had watery, flavourless pork in the UK, there might be some specialists now, you know, with the boars and all this sort of stuff. I've been out of the UK for decades. But the pork here is cheap and it's amazing. So we'll get pork. I'll do roast joints. I did one a couple of days ago. I've got some great pictures of roasting over a barbecue in the back garden from a couple of weeks ago. Or the wife will, because pork is in Asia, in Japan, Thailand, Philippines, whatever. Pork is very important to the local diet. So the wife might make up a soup, which will be a very, very simple water base with, I don't know how well you know Asia. You know quite a bit about China by the sounds of it, but they use a lot of patis over here, or fish sauce, to replace salt.
Yeah.
So you'll have a water patis based gravy or water soup, for want of a better word, and then they'll use a bit of boiled pork in it, maybe some greens like bok choy and stuff like that, and a few chopped up bits of maize or sweet corn, and a few chopped up bits of potato. I'm quite happy to sit at the table with them and eat that. Obviously, I'll only eat the soup, the broth, and the pork. There's probably a few carbs that have leaked out of the potatoes and stuff into the broth, but that's not going to kill me, and I'm more than happy to eat that with them. But what I think and again, once you're out of the cities, out of the urban areas, which we are here, we live in what was, as I say, it was the old US Navy base. So there's a few thousand houses here and the shops and everything down the hill. But the Filipinos traditionally eat fish, rice, pork, beef. And that's very much in my wife's cooking. I cook 80% of the time, I suppose. But once in a while, she'll come up with something that she wants to do. She gets a craving for it. And some of it, not all of it, but some of it, I'll tell you about another dish later, that I'll sit down and eat it with her. Now, what you were alluding to is we're very, very, very lucky here. We're on the coast. We've got the markets, as I explained. We get daily, twice a day, 2 different catches. We get fresh seafood. Which is dirt cheap. So once a week, I'll do an American style, a Louisiana style, a pot roast or a wok roast. Sorry, not a wok roast. What do they call it? What do the Americans call it? They call it a boil or a broil.
Right.
And all that is we typically have fresh prawns, fresh clams, squid, oysters, mussels, and she'll buy 1 kilo or 2 kilos each of those. We've got a typical Asian style. We've got a wok. I can't even show you how big it is on the screen here. It's probably 3 feet across.
Wow.
And we'll put that on the coals. I'll put in 2 great big blocks of butter, bit of garlic powder, bit of paprika, and a few other little bits and bobs. Nothing that's going to hurt me. And I'll toss that in the butter for a few minutes. And we'll have that probably once a week or once every 2 weeks. We make a point of having that. Number one, because the family loves it, and for me, I do it for the iodine, because I know exactly where my beef's raised, because I know the farms where they're raised, but I don't know how they're treated. So I don't know whether the grass. A lot of the beef here is raised on the side of volcanoes, so you've got a lot of the ash and stuff in the ground. How much iodine and that sort of, I don't know. So I do support iodine, and when I do support it, I do feel better. After I've had my seafood dose, the following day I notice it. Oh, that feels a bit better. If we don't have that, because you've got to remember, we're eating very seasonally here as far as that goes, because we're typhoon country. and sometimes the boats can't get out, or it's just not the season for the prawns, or whatever. So I mentioned it. I keep a bottle of Lugol's on my coffee station, and I'll if I hadn't had my iodine fix, I'll put a couple of drops in my black coffee in the morning. And again, if I've not had it for a few days, I notice it.
Interesting.
Yeah, so
iodine.
iodine certainly seems to be one of the things that you need to support. Certainly for me, that's what I find. Again, as you put across the screen, it's not for a doctor to worry about. Sorry, it's not for me to tell you what to do, but it works for me.
And at the end of the day, as I've said on a number of different interviews, we are our own living experiment. We're our bodies are laboratories, not laboratories, but laboratories. But yeah. So if someone was seriously, this is a question I love to ask people that come on. So if somebody was thinking about doing carnivore, what would you advise from your own experiences?
Not to do it the way I did it. I jumped into it head first and set what I felt at the time were perfectly reasonable goals. And I think I suffered. Oops, just give me a second.
No problem.
That's better. And I think I suffered from it to a certain extent. I think I could have done it better. If I was advising somebody to do it now, don't rush, transition slowly. I did it overnight.
Yeah.
Beef and cabbage. From the day before, maybe I'd cooked a full curry. I love cooking. So, the day before I might have had a full curry with basmati rice and bread and all the rest of it and all the sugar. And as I say, that first, I'm having a problem with this. Can you say something?
Yep.
We're back. Yeah, Houston, we had a problem.
It's not the headphones, it's the ears. You need to replace the ears.
Yeah. Now, that's one thing that I don't need to do. My tinnitus has got better.
That's interesting. I've heard this before.
I've got
a number of people.
List of, other than the IBS, which I didn't know about.
Okay, so do you want to give us? Do you want to go through
Let me finish about the advice first.
Sorry, my apologies.
Let's do that one first, and then I've got a whole host of stuff we can go through.
So I've got a feeling we're going to have to do another recording soon, because you've got obviously so much good content that I don't want it to be lost in one film. So we're definitely going to do a follow-up on this one. So, so back to your advice.
All right. Yep. All right. So, as I say, don't rush into it. It took decades, in most cases, for people to put on all the fat and get sick. You can't expect to get thin or lose fat and get healthy overnight. Yeah. I went about it the wrong way because I had a goal because of the Rona. And what I've learned, certainly being in maintenance, weight maintenance, not health maintenance, weight maintenance for the last couple of years. And I don't know who said it. It might have been Ken Berry. It might have been Bart Kay. I don't know who said it, but it was something along the lines of eat to get healthy to lose weight. Don't eat to lose weight to get healthy. If that makes sense.
That makes total sense.
And I did it the wrong way round. So yeah, transition slowly. If I were to do it all over again, if I were to completely go off plan, for a period of time, and I'm not talking a few days, I would do it slowly. I would transition slowly. And I'll tell you a story about this in a minute. I would transition slowly, cutting down what I was cutting out. You can cut out seed oils overnight. You can cut out added sugar into your coffee and tea and stuff overnight. That doesn't matter. But the macro, I don't like talking about macros. I just do it. I just eat meat. I just eat protein. I just eat fat. And I eat until I'm full. But if you're coming from, way over there, drinking the Coke and the crisps and the the cookies and biscuits and, you know, cakes and donuts and all the rest of it, I wouldn't recommend diving in straight overnight like I did. I never got keto flu, which a lot of people do, which is strange. I felt, you know, other than feeling a bit nauseated with all the fat, I was all right. But I think, or I believe, not think, I believe that my health would have been better without shocking the system quite so quickly.
Right.
I've got no evidence for that.
Yeah.
I just feel that I rushed into it a little bit quickly.
That's great advice.
And as I say, the other thing that I would do is go and earn your degree on YouTube. Watch as many hours of different opinions as you can find, and find out what works for you. As you sort of you alluded to there earlier, nobody's going to come in and take away your carnivore card.
Yeah.
Because you've used pepper when you're only, you shouldn't use pepper, you know, you should only use some bollocks.
Yeah.
Find what works for you. And that means experimenting. It's like you said, it means that you play, you experiment. And I've been doing that for a couple of years now, because I was very absorbed, if you want, by the dogma.
Yeah.
You know, in the same way as you've got the sad food pyramid, I was looking at the keto and the carnivore pyramids. You have to eat this, you have to do that, you have to do the bollocks. You understand the mechanisms, understand why different things do different things, and find your own way. I mean, I probably started keto really before the carnivore thing really took off. I was aware of it, obviously. I think, as I said, Ken Berry had been doing it for a short while, but his channel prior to that was primarily keto.
Yeah.
Same with all the others. And they have slowly, I think, was it Sean Baker that came up with the title? Dr. Sean Baker came up with Ketovore as a meat-only diet. What was I saying? Yeah, so I sort of found my own way to a certain extent, and I as I say, I'm a contrarian. You know, bollocks. I'm not listening to that. I've read this, and this works for me. The biggest one, which we mentioned yesterday, the biggest one for me was coffee. I'm an old Brit. For the last 50 odd years, I've drunk 2 or 3 cups of builder's tea in the morning. You know,
so just explain for those that don't understand. Builder's tea is very strong tea. Your spoon can almost stand up in the tea when you
leave the tea bag in the cup.
Yeah.
And it stews as you drink it. Loads of milk, loads of sugar. I was probably 2 or 3 spoons of sugar in my tea. And when I decided to start keto way back when, I just couldn't drink tea. I tried green tea. I drink a bit of it now, funny enough, but back then I couldn't drink green tea. I certainly couldn't drink something like an Earl Grey or whatever with a slice of lemon in it, with your pinky sticking out. I couldn't do that. So I decided, well, I'm going to have to replace this. I'm very routine oriented. I live for routine. I live by routine. So I've got to replace this. So I started nicking a little bit of my wife's Nescafe coffee, black. And it was horrendous. It was horrible. So I thought, right, I need to make this work. I can't go back to tea because I can't drink it. I know there's pros and cons for coffee. And I'm fully aware of that. For me, right now, the pros outweigh the cons.
Right.
They keep me satiated to and past lunchtime, or they lower the ghrelin. I don't get so hungry. It does uprate your metabolism. So if you're in ketosis, you're going to burn a little bit more. And it's just comforting to have that warm drink. Even it's 33 degrees outside earlier today, sweaty hot. But I'll still have my coffee in the morning. It's part of the routine. It's part of the comfort. It's the way I like to start the day. So I did a deep dive into coffee brewing. I've got a coffee nook that my wife had built for me downstairs because I was taking over the kitchen counter with all my coffee gear. You know, I've got 7 or 8 ways of brewing coffee. You know, manual espresso machines and Vietnamese coffee percolators and Italian mocha pots, the lot. Trying to find out how to produce the rabbit hole now is trying to produce, like any coffee nerd. The rabbit hole now is trying to produce the best cup of coffee ever.
Right.
But I got to a point relatively quickly where, yeah, I like this. Grinding my own beans, telling the roaster I've got up the road here what roast level I wanted, what temperatures, blah blah blah, where to crack the bean, where to go to the double crack. It gets very, very involved. But I'm at the point now where you are not taking away my coffee.
Right. That's quite clear. That's quite clear.
I'm so invested in it. There will come a time, perhaps, where if coffee isn't doing me any good, or the cons are outweighing the pros, then I'll give it up. Because, you know, at the end of the day, we've got to look after our health. But anyway,
that works for you. That works for you.
That's my point.
Like it's all
that's my whole point.
Yeah,
I eat some keto meals sometimes, rarely,
mm-hmm.
but I'll eat a keto. Or what would, if the wife's doing the cooking, I'll just subtract the rice, and what's left is keto. You know, it's got a few vegetables in it, so I'll eat it. You know, it doesn't happen very often. If I fancy an omelette, I typically, the way I actually eat during the day is, if I get hungry, it's normally early on. It's normally about 2:33, maybe 3:30 in the afternoon. And because I sit down with the family to an evening meal, I'm not going to stuff myself then and miss out on the family. So I'll have 2 or 3 scrambled eggs, just to see me through till dinner time. You know, a couple of hours later, we normally eat about 6:30. If I fancy just scrambled eggs with a bit of butter on it, I'll have it. If I want to fry a little bit of onion, maybe a bit of garlic, or, you know, sliced tomato, or whatever, I'll do it. For variety. Am I strictly carnivore? No. I don't like the label. The label means nothing to me. I'm doing what works for me.
Yeah.
Whilst typically, other than a couple of times a month, again, that's routine for me, I'll stick within the bounds of the ketogenic framework, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, keto through to carnivore. I'm typically carnivore, but I'm happy to move. I'm not going to be bound by a label or the dogma.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. So to finish, I know I've been rambling a bit, but to finish off the question of what would I advise is ease into it over a few weeks. Let your body tell you the way. That's one thing that I do a lot, is listen to my body.
Yeah.
You couldn't really, when you're eating crap and drinking and smoking. I used to be a really heavy smoker. I used to smoke 80 cigarettes a day, 4 packs a day. You can't. There's nothing. Your body can't scream loud enough at you. But once you've been at a proper way of eating, the perfect human diet, whatever you want to call it, you can listen to your body, and it's not me making this up. It's true.
100% agree with you. 100% agree with you.
And as long as
I often say to people, I often say to people, listen to your body, not your subconscious brain, because your subconscious brain craves sugar.
Interesting.
But your body,
is that right?
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, your brain craves instant fix. So sugars, hidden sugars, and glucose, and all that will do
serotonin, and all the rest of it.
So what the body wants the brain to have is fat, because obviously it then can create the hormones and it can feed the brain and make it function better. So I've always said, listen to your body, not your subconscious brain.
Wow.
because that's when you get the temptation and the craving. It's your subconscious telling you you really do want that Snickers bar, or you do want that, bit of cake. It's not because your conscious brain would be saying, no, I'm doing well here, I don't need this. But your subconscious is your desire and your passion to have something.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm going to have to take that on board, because I do struggle with one thing. Because I was locked down for 8 months, I had no obstacles, I had no detractions, nothing. I found it very easy. I found it extremely easy. Other than that, those initial days with nausea and stuff like that, I found it really easy. I was eating meat, which I liked. I was eating a little bit of vegetable because I thought I had to back at that time. And to be fair, I did find it bulked out the meat a bit and got me fuller quicker, if that makes sense. The cabbage and the broccoli and stuff. But as soon as I told the wife what I was doing, she stopped buying the big bottles of Coke, so they weren't in the fridge anymore. She stopped buying the big packets of Lay's, so they weren't in the fridge anymore. So there was nothing there. And I think once I came out of lockdown and we moved house, there were no proper cravings there at all. I think I was forced, if you will. If I'd said to the wife, get me a packet of crisps, I'd already told her beforehand.
Yeah.
You're the one that's going out the side of the house. I can't go and get it.
Yeah.
Don't bring it back into the house.
Yeah.
So I was, and I don't really, because I was so locked, I was actually terribly depressed right at the beginning. I never really thought about it. So I got through that fairly easy, and I've not had cravings since. Okay, I get the odd craving for a mince pie at Christmas, because I know what I'm looking forward to it. I know what's coming, and I'm choosing.
Yes,
that's my choice.
Empowered decision
is fine. I like that empowered decision. However, now I don't know whether this is subconscious or whether it's something to do with your sugar levels dropping late in the evening. If I go to bed too late, I will often get hungry 10 o'clock at night. Normally eat about 6:30. I will get hungry at about 10 o'clock at night. And the first thing that I aim for, and I have failed a couple of times, not many, but I have failed a couple of times, I'll go in and make a ham sandwich or a bacon sandwich. The meat's still there. The butter's still there.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether that's to do with the sugar levels or that phrase that you just used. It's at the back of your brain rather than your body.
I'm a great believer, because if you've heard me mention before, I'm starting the process of doing a PhD, so I can talk from some level of authority, and I'm working around fat and the influence of fat on the brain and all that. And it's interesting. The more I've done the research I've done about the subconscious is where the thoughts that you have that you didn't realize, when it just pops into your head and it's not something you've been consciously thinking about, so.
That's interesting. I'm going to have to look into that myself, because that's one area that I'm ignorant of. I've not looked at that, even after all this time. No, that's interesting.
So we've been going nearly an hour and a quarter, and we said we didn't want to make it too long, and I'm quite happy to do another one with you to follow up on this, because I think there's a lot to be said. But I would like to touch upon, you said about your list of the health improvements that you had. I think anyone that's still watching this would be really impressed with the list, because you've sent stuff to me on social media, and I think it's right that it comes from you.
I can add it to the bottom, to the content of this when you eventually post it. But let me go back so I can remember it all. So we know the goals that I set myself to be healthy for the Rona if it ever came along. It never did. Where are we? There we go. Yeah, so I got way back into normal BMI range. I improved blood pressure. That's what we spoke about earlier. IBS was the big one for me, because I'd never even looked at it. I'd never even considered it. And I was very angry when that happened, because I'd been to my local GP, who was a top doctor, I was probably late teens, very early 20s when it started. He fixed me up with a hospital in Chelmsford, which you'll know very well.
Yeah, I know Chelmsford. Yeah.
Went into Chelmsford. He had a personal friend as well that was at Whitechapel Hospital in London. In fact, that was the hospital where I was born, but simple coincidence. And I went to these doctors. They had me on tables, tilting me up, tilting me down with barium meals. I don't know what they do these days. I mean, this is 30 odd years ago. Tilting me up and down and then they trace the flow of the liquid, which I think has got a radioactive isotope or something in it, and they trace it through your stomach, through your guts, and all the rest of it. I went to 2 or 3 of these people in my 20s. Oh, there's nothing wrong with you. Yeah, it's all in your head. Blah blah blah. And then within 6 weeks of eating properly, it had gone.
Incredible.
Completely enough. I forget what Bart Kay says, but you can set your watch by in the morning, straight in, lay a rope, out. You know, not to be too graphic.
Yeah, don't worry.
And I when it first happened, I first noticed it, I was really angry, suffering for 40 years, losing jobs, not being able to travel, not being able to go on holidays and stuff like that. So that was easily the biggest one for me.
Yeah,
was to get past that. What else have we got here? Lost jobs. Yeah, okay. Heartburn. I was taking Nexium like Smarties.
Wow.
I didn't know, because nobody had told me, that bread, pastry, seed oils, everything that you're eating when you're working, you're going out for a burger, you're going out for a pizza, you're going out for a sandwich, blah blah blah. All of that was causing heartburn. And even for a while, beer would cause it. I think that's fairly common knowledge, but back then it caused it. Certainly, within a couple of months of starting keto carnivore, no labels, eating properly, that had gone.
Yeah.
I've got a mate that travels. He's a Burnley supporter, so he's sort of a mate. He travels in from between Philippines and Spain, and he brings, because Nexium is a couple of quid a tablet here, or was. I don't know what it is now. I haven't used it in ages, but it was a couple of quid a tablet. My mate would get me for about a tenner or less than a tenner. He'd get me a full pot from Spain.
Right.
Yeah, put that up. And I've got a pot that's 3 years old, that's 3/4 full. I probably needed to take a Nexium, I don't know, 5 or 6 times in the last 3 years. So I call that in remission. That's cured. That was such a, because I go out for a beer with my wife, with my friends, and if it was a proper session, I'd be coming back home, sitting on the tight side of the bed, spitting into a bucket the amount of phlegm and muck that your body was producing to try and protect your esophagus. The second I laid down, I had to sit up again. I was in a right mess with it. Was gone. I can even go out now, as I said, have a couple of light beers, have a couple of whiskies with me mates in the evening. Not a niggle. Yeah. So that was huge. Oh, this is for the wife. My testosterone went up from about 250 to about 450, I think it was 450, 500, towards that. The last time I checked it a few months ago. So when I used to leave her alone and lonely in the bedroom, that's not that's not happening anymore.
Well, I always say, since I've been on Carnivore, I can't roll out of bed. I'll let you use your own imagination on that.
Well, funnier than that, that's returning as well as a 60-year-old.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
I'm not
yes.
far behind you. I'm 57, so I'm
Right.
on your
Okay.
tail.
No, that's it's still a ooh.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
like when I was 20, but it's still ooh.
Yeah. Because the fact I stopped snoring, I was still in
That
bed
was
in
the
the
next
morning
one.
with the wife. Yeah. So
Yeah.
sorry. Carry on.
Yeah. No, that was the
Yeah.
next one. Is snoring.
Yeah.
I was never as bad as you in that you used to sort of get up halfway in your sleep and
I
walk
used to
to
be
another.
sent to the spare room as a reckless
Yeah,
driver.
I didn't have that, but I'm sure the wife tried to put a pillow over my head a couple of times, but no, she'd just give me a dig or just grab me like. But yeah, the snoring's gone. Again, I didn't understand until Ken Berry explained it a couple of years ago. It's fatty tongue.
Yeah.
The gap between your tongue and the roof of your mouth closes when you lie down, especially with all the fat round here as well. So that was for the wife. That's been immense.
Yeah. Well, that's right. Well, it's for you as well because it improves your relationship, doesn't it? So.
Oh yeah. She's getting a proper night's sleep now. She says I snore once in a while if I've had a few too many beers, but that's rarely. I mean, when I do say I'm going out for a couple of beers and a couple of whiskies, that's what it is.
Yeah.
You know, although over Christmas
you're more relaxed. Your throat's probably more relaxed because of the
Yeah.
alcohol. So.
Yeah, that's possible. I mentioned the MCI, the possible MCI, slurring my words, and all that changed literally weeks. I've mentioned the lockdown depression. Yeah, I've had quite a few things happen recently, so they've taken time, 1 or 2 years for me to start noticing, and they're small, but they're important. Oh yeah, one of the old things that I had as well. I'm just looking at the list I've got in front of me. One of the old things that I had, I was bitten. We're very close to Australia here, and there's lots of nasty things in the jungle here. Lots of nasty things. And I got bitten. Yeah, on my hand. Just here. You can't see it. There's nothing there.
Right.
But the whole of my hand, across the back of my hand, in between my fingers. The whole of my hand, I had for probably 15 years, I had like an eczema.
Oh, interesting.
I would scratch it, the skin would break, it would ooze, and it all came from a spider bite. I remember it happening. It was in the office, it came down off the ceiling, settled on my hand, I went to smack it. I don't know whether it was the shadow, the light, or whatever, but it bit me. And for years, I had sort of little lumps and dry skin and cuts. I only had to do that too much and the skin would crack and it would ooze and a scab would form. And that disappeared within a couple of months. The whole lot just went. Skin irritation, the lot. Something else, certainly, I'll come on to the other one later. But my arm skin, I'm an old man, so there's all marks and stuff on there. But my skin used to be really leathery. Like an old piece of leather. It's completely smooth now. There's nothing there. I'm an old man, but I don't have old skin like I had 3-4 years ago. So that's gone over. That went relatively quickly, and it's still improving. Let's come up to date a little bit more. Where are we? What have I mentioned? I don't want to forget this because, it's not me showing off or being a big head. It's what can happen. What does happen? Well, what has happened to me. And I've heard stories about it all the time. So I know I'm not a one-off. Right. Most recently, and it's only just started happening in the last few months. I've got osteoporosis. It's hereditary, apparently. So when I was originally diagnosed, I've got osteoporosis in my lower spine.
Right.
And it used to be L3, L4, L5, very, just above your coccyx.
Yeah.
And I got to the point where I would have like a back spasm. This started in my 30s. I started playing it when I was living in the Middle East. That's another life. That's another story. When I was living in the Middle East, I couldn't play rugby anymore because it was just too goddamn hot outside.
Yeah.
I played a few games on the oil and sand pitches, but I didn't like it. It wasn't proper rugby. So I started playing squash because it was indoors, air conditioned, 40, 50 degrees outside. And I sort of twist a bit wrong, and my back were going to spasm. And I literally had to crawl to the bathroom because I couldn't stand up. That started back then. Didn't happen very often because I've been pretty much sedentary as far as I do a bit of walking, but I was pretty much sedentary after that because I just couldn't do it. I physically couldn't do it. So in the last few months, I've stopped going to a chiropractor that I went to for a long time. He would just do little resets once. When I feel a bit of a tweak, off to the chiropractor, click. I was good for the next few weeks. I've not had any X-rays, so I don't know whether my bone density's got any better with the meat. But I no longer have to go to the chiropractor for resets. That's just started happening. As I say, in the last few months. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, Ben. We've been going an hour and 25 now, so
we haven't even started.
Yeah. Well, as I say, if you're happy to, I'm quite happy to do another one with you in a week or so's time or something, and we can take it on.
It's up to you.
Yeah, I find your content is phenomenal. It's great, and I want people to enjoy it, and I don't want to cut it short unnecessarily. So what I'll do, I'll wrap up now for this particular one. I'll get this edited, although there's very little editing I need to do on it. To be fair, it's more the beginning bit and the end bit.
Sure.
And I'll try and get this out online later on today, and I'll let you know. I think it's been brilliant content. I can't thank you enough.
Not a problem.
And let's do a part two. Definitely, let's do a part two, and I'll touch base with you on WhatsApp, and we'll set this up.
Maybe edit out the bit where we started talking about recent progress and start there. Up to you.
Maybe. That might be an idea, because then we can take it as the part two. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Sure.
Because anyhow, Ben.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time.
Go ahead.
I'm going to end the recording now, and then stay on, and I'll chat to you after I've ended the recording. So I'd just like to thank everyone. Please subscribe if you like this content, especially if you want to see the follow-up one with Ben. Thanks again, and remember, 2024 is the year of the carnivore.